"We're finished here," Martinez announced. "Ms. Thompson, any future incidents will result in your immediate arrest. The citation requires a court appearance within 30 days. As the officers prepared to leave, Jessica stood isolated in her own kitchen, facing the consequences of 5 years of ingratitude that had culminated in violence. The police cars pulled away, leaving the family in a stunned silence. Jessica stood alone by the kitchen counter, the citation clutched in her trembling hand. The official document represented more than just legal consequences. It marked the complete collapse of her victim narrative. "Mom!" Paul approached me carefully, his voice thick with emotion. "I had no idea how much you've sacrificed for us. $38,000, and I never even knew." Edward placed his weathered hand on my arm. "Margaret, you handled this entire situation with such dignity. A lesser person would have pressed full charges." Francis nodded approvingly. "You're a better woman than I would have been in your position, showing mercy after what she put you through." Sophie wiped tears from her eyes. "The way you stayed so calm during that attack, that shows real character." I looked around the room at the overturned furniture, the remnants of our ruined Thanksgiving, and the family members who now understood the complete truth. Despite everything, we were still together. "What matters is keeping our family intact," I said simply. "Jessica made mistakes, but destroying her won't solve anything." Jessica finally found her voice, barely above a whisper. I don't know how to repay you. The money, yes, but also..." She gestured helplessly at the chaos around us. "This, what I've done." "You can start by acknowledging the truth," I replied, "and by making sure this violence never happens again." Paul moved to stand beside me, his choice clear. "Mom, I am so sorry. I should have seen what was happening. I should have recognized how much you were giving." "You have your own family to worry about," I assured him. "That's how it should be." Francis surveyed the disheveled living room. "Well, we still have a Thanksgiving dinner to figure out. We can't let one person's tantrum ruin the whole holiday." Edward smiled for the first time in hours. "I know a restaurant that delivers traditional dinners. It's expensive, but it's worth it under the circumstances." "I'll pay for it," Jessica said quickly, then caught herself. "I mean, if I can use a credit card since I don't actually have any cash available." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Sophie actually chuckled. "At least you're being honest now." Within an hour, the house had been straightened, the furniture rearranged, and delivery drivers had brought a complete Thanksgiving feast. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, all the traditional dishes that should have graced our table hours ago. As we gathered around the dining room table, the family looked different than it had that morning. Relationships had shifted. The truth had been revealed. Consequences had been faced, but we were still family. "I'd like to say something," Paul announced, raising his water glass. "Today, I learned that my mother is not just reliable. She is extraordinary. Her generosity, her patience, her dignity under pressure. Mom, thank you for everything you have sacrificed for us." "To Margaret," Edward added, lifting his glass, "the most generous person any of us know." Francis joined the toast. "To integrity and family." Even Jessica raised her glass, though her voice cracked as she spoke. To second chances, and to the woman who gave me more of them than I deserved." As we began eating the restaurant-prepared meal, I felt a satisfaction that was deeper than any turkey I had ever cooked could have provided. It wasn't because I had won some battle, but because the truth had prevailed. Justice had been served, not through revenge, but through consequences and recognition. The borrowed Thanksgiving dinner tasted perfect. Around the table sat family members who now understood the real meaning of gratitude, sacrifice, and reliability. Sometimes, the most important victories aren't the ones where you defeat your enemies, but the ones where you maintain your character while the truth reveals itself. I was still the woman who had burned the turkey, but I was also the woman who had kept her family together through a crisis, maintained her dignity under attack, and chosen mercy when justice was in her power. That felt like the most reliable thing I had ever done. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.
"You're useless. You're completely unreliable," my daughter-in-law screamed. her voice echoing through the house after I ruined the Thanksgiving turkey. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Our guests stood motionless, their faces etched with shock, but a strange calm settled over me. I smiled faintly, rose to my feet, and met her furious gaze. "Then why?" I asked, my voice steady. "Do you find me so reliable whenever you need money?" The events that unfolded after that question left me with no choice but to dial 911. The oven door shrieked open with a groan of protesting metal. A thick, black cloud of smoke poured out, filling the kitchen with the punishing stench of incinerated poultry and charred stuffing. My hands, protected by oven mitts, trembled as I retrieved the roasting pan. The turkey's skin was a landscape of cracks and blackness, completely unrecognizable. Above me, the smoke alarm began its high-pitched, piercing shriek. "What in God's name is that?" Jessica's sharp voice sliced through the chaos from the kitchen entryway. Looming behind her, my brother Edward, my sister Frances, and our friend Sophie were paralyzed, their expressions shifting in a painful instant. From festive excitement to utter disbelief, the scorched turkey sat on the countertop, a grim monument to a culinary disaster. "I must have fallen asleep," I whispered, placing the ruined bird down as if it were fragile evidence at a crime scene. "My phone's battery died. I am so sorry." "Sorry?" Jessica stalked into the kitchen, her face flushing a deep, angry crimson. "Sorry isn't going to salvage Thanksgiving, Margaret. We have 24 people arriving in less than 2 hours. My son, Paul, appeared at her side, his hand flying to his mouth in dismay. "Mom, oh my gosh! The guests, some are already pulling into the neighborhood." I tried to think of a solution. Any solution. "I can get in the car and drive to the grocery store," I offered, my voice strained. "Perhaps they have some pre-cooked turkeys left." Jessica let out a laugh, but it was a sound devoid of humor, sharp and full of scorn. "On Thanksgiving afternoon? Everything in this town has been closed for hours, you senile old woman." A collective gasp filled the kitchen. Edward's eyes narrowed. Frances took a step forward, her expression hardening. "Now, hold on a second." But Jessica was on a roll, completely unstoppable. She grabbed the turkey by one of its blackened legs and heaved it towards the trash can. It fell short, spattering hot grease across the pristine linoleum floor. "This is precisely what I should have anticipated from you. Absolutely nothing you get involved with ever turns out right." "Jessica, please, stop," Paul begged, reaching for her arm, but she violently shook him off. "No, Paul. I am finished with pretending this woman is a dependable member of our family. Just look at this disaster. Look at what she's done to our holiday." I stood there, rooted to the spot, absorbing each insult as if it were a physical blow. The smoke continued to cascade from the open oven, a gray curtain falling on the scene, yet no one made a move to shut it off. Sophie covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide with shock. Tears began to well up in my brother Edward's eyes. "I already said I was sorry," I repeated, my voice remaining surprisingly level, despite the shame that was burning a hole in my chest. "I will figure out a fix. There has to be some other option." "Solutions?" Jessica whirled around, her entire body rigid with fury. "You always think you can solve every problem by throwing money at it, don't you? Well, guess what? This time, your checkbook isn't going to rescue the day." The kitchen fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the relentless wail of the smoke alarm. Finally, my sister Frances reached past me and switched off the oven. But the emotional damage was already irreversible. The suffocating smell of failure hung thick in the air, an unspoken accusation aimed directly at me. "That is quite enough," Edward said, his voice firm and unwavering. But Jessica paid him no mind. "Do you want to know what your real problem is, Margaret? You make grand promises you can't possibly keep. You parade around like you're some kind of savior. But when it's truly important, when your family is actually depending on you, you fall asleep at your post. Her words struck a chord deep within me, unlocking a flood of memories. All those desperate phone calls. All those times she had called me reliable, dependable, her personal savior. All those financial crises where she needed money, needed my help, needed someone to bail her out of yet another self-inflicted disaster. The sheer hypocrisy of her tirade hit me with the force of a physical shock. Reliable? The word escaped my lips. Quieter than I had intended, but it landed in the tense silence with undeniable force. You want to stand here and talk about being reliable, Jessica? The word echoed in the cavern of my mind as I stared at her enraged face. In an instant, the smoky kitchen dissolved around me. I was transported back to my small apartment in Chicago in 2019. I saw Jessica pacing my living room floor, her eyes swimming with tears. "I just don't know what else to do, Margaret," she'd sobbed. "The bank is telling us they need $15,000 by Friday, or they'll foreclose on the house." Her voice had cracked then, all her usual arrogance stripped away. "Paul has no idea how dire the situation, Island. The kids." I had written the check right then and there, without a moment's hesitation. $15,000 drawn from my modest savings, handed over without a contract, without any discussion of a repayment schedule, based solely on the trust I thought existed between family. "I will never, ever forget this," she had promised, clutching my hand tightly. "You are saving our entire future." But she had forgotten. 2 years later, she was back for more. "It's for Tanya's tuition," she had explained over coffee at a diner near her office. "It's $8,000 for the spring semester. Her scholarship didn't come through, and if we can't pay it by Monday, she'll be forced to drop out." I had said yes immediately. My granddaughter's education was more important than any sacrifice I had to make. That time, the money came from my retirement fund. What did an old woman like me really need with extravagances anyway? "Mom, you are an absolute lifesaver," Paul had called to thank me later. "Jessica says you're the most generous person she's ever known, the most generous person she knew." That's what I was. Right up until her car's transmission gave out in 2022. "The transmission is completely shot," she'd lamented over the phone, calling me from the mechanic's garage. "They're quoting me $3,500 to fix it, and I absolutely need the car for my job. I'm desperate here, Margaret. Desperate." It was a word that featured prominently in Jessica's vocabulary whenever she needed something from me. I had driven directly to the auto shop and paid the bill in cash, watching the relief wash over her face like sunshine breaking through a storm. "You always come through," she had said, shaking my hand with vigor. "I don't deserve a mother-in-law like you." No, I thought to myself now. She probably didn't. The most difficult time was last winter. It was for Paul's surgery, the one their insurance only agreed to partially cover. It left them with $12,000 in medical bills that Jessica couldn't manage on top of all her other debts. I met her at the hospital's billing department, transferring the funds from my rapidly shrinking retirement account, while my son recovered in a room upstairs. She had cried that day, genuine tears of gratitude mixed with shame. "I will pay you back," she had whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Every single penny, I swear on my children's lives." But her promises were as substantial as smoke, visible for a fleeting moment before vanishing into thin air. And there were the countless smaller requests too. $200 for groceries when her paycheck was delayed. $500 to cover the heating bill during a brutal February cold snap. $300 when their washing machine suddenly died. "It's just until payday," she would always say. "You know I'm good for it." Over the span of 5 years, these small favors had accumulated to a staggering sum of more than $40,000. I had kept a quiet tally in my mind, not because I was holding it over her head, but because I needed to remind myself what family meant to me. Even when it was painfully obvious it didn't mean the same thing to her. And now, here she was, in front of our extended family, screaming at me about reliability. She was acting as if I had never done anything for her except let her down, as if this single burnt turkey was the sole measure of my worth. The flashback dissipated, and I was back in the suffocatingly smoky kitchen, meeting Jessica's venomous stare. "Yes," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Let's do that. Let's talk about what it means to be reliable." 8 hours earlier, the November morning had been idyllic. A delicate layer of frost glittered on the windshields of the cars lining the quiet suburban street as I drove through the neighborhood at 9 a.m. Festive holiday decorations adorned every porch, and the comforting aroma of wood smoke from nearby fireplaces drifted in through my open car window. Paul and Jessica's house, a lovely 2-story colonial, looked warm and inviting from the curb. I could see the glow of lights in the kitchen windows, and my son Paul's silhouette moving about inside, already immersed in holiday preparations. He greeted me at the door with a warm hug, a fresh mug of coffee, and a grateful smile. "Mom, you are a lifesaver for doing this," he said. "Having you here to watch the turkey means I can focus on everything else without having a complete meltdown." The kitchen was a hub of organized activity. Casserole dishes were lined up on the counters, and ingredients were sorted into meticulously arranged piles. The magnificent 18-pound turkey was thawing in a large roasting pan, awaiting its seasoning. "Morning, Margaret," Jessica said as she appeared in the doorway. Her tie was already loosened, and she held a coffee mug. Her greeting was civil, but there was an unmistakable chill in her tone. "I hope everything runs a bit more smoothly this time." I chose to ignore her subtle dig. "It will," I replied evenly. "What time are the guests scheduled to arrive?" 5:30, Paul answered, retrieving a bundle of fresh herbs from the refrigerator. "That should give us more than enough time." He then began to walk me through the turkey procedure, step by detailed step. "The turkey needs to be in the oven by 2:30. It will cook for 3 hours at 350 degrees. He showed me how to rub the herb mixture under the skin, brush melted butter over the top, and fashion an aluminum foil tent to cover it for the first 2 hours. I listened intently, nodding along with each instruction. "Set an alarm on your phone for exactly 30 minutes before you need to check on it," he stressed. "Mom, this part is critical. The timing has to be absolutely perfect." I took out my phone and set the alarm. The battery indicator showed 23%. That should be more than enough to last a few hours, I thought. I typed, "turkey, 30 minutes, into the reminder. Jessica lingered by the kitchen door, scrolling through her own phone. "I have to make a few work calls," she announced, "and then I have a couple of errands to run. You're going to be okay here by yourself, right?" There it was again, that sliver of doubt, masked as concern. I had been preparing holiday feasts since before she was born, yet Jessica always managed to find a way to subtly question my competence. "She'll be perfectly fine," Paul said firmly. "Mom has cooked more Thanksgiving dinners than both of us put together." He was right. 40 years of marriage to my late husband had ingrained in me every holiday tradition, every cooking technique necessary for a flawless meal. This turkey would be no exception. "I should probably get started on the stuffing preparation," Paul continued, tying an apron around his waist. "Mom, you just keep your focus on the turkey. Nothing is more important than getting that bird cooked to perfection." We worked side by side in a comfortable silence, his hands moving with practiced efficiency as he chopped vegetables while I prepared the seasoning rub for the turkey. These were the moments that reminded me why family was so important. The quiet collaboration, the shared sense of purpose, the understanding that we were creating something meaningful together. An hour later, Jessica reappeared, now dressed for her errands. "Paul, honey, I'm heading out. Do you need me to pick up anything while I'm in town? Just make sure you're back by 4, he called out, not looking up from the large mixing bowl. "I want us to have time to get ready," before the guests start arriving. She kissed his cheek and then walked through the garage, leaving us to our work. The house immediately felt calmer, more peaceful, without her agitated energy. "She's just been really stressed about her job," Paul said quietly, as if he could read my thoughts. "Her company has been making some cutbacks. She's worried she might be next." I nodded in understanding, but I didn't excuse her behavior. Financial strain was no justification for treating family poorly, especially a family member who had shouldered her burdens time and time again for years. By noon, the turkey was perfectly seasoned and ready for the oven. The oven was preheated to a steady 350 degrees. My phone alarm was set, and the battery still showed enough of a charge to get me through the afternoon. "I need to make a quick run to the store," Paul said, untying his apron. "I can't believe I completely forgot the cranberry sauce." He gave me one last set of instructions regarding the turkey's timing, then grabbed his wallet and keys. "Exactly 30 minutes, Mom. Set your timer, and please don't let anything distract you." "I won't," I promised, walking him to the door. "You take your time. Everything here is completely under control." The house grew silent after he departed. Jessica was still out running her errands, so I had the entire place to myself. I settled into a plush, comfortable armchair in the living room, my phone placed within easy reach on the end table. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction with the morning's progress. This was what I lived for: being useful, being needed, being an integral part of something important. The turkey was going to be magnificent. The family would all gather, and for this one special evening, all the minor resentments and financial strains would melt away, replaced by shared gratitude and cherished tradition. I closed my eyes for just a moment, savoring the peaceful quiet of the empty house. 3 o'clock arrived, and the afternoon sun streamed through the living room windows. I performed one final check on the oven. The turkey was browning beautifully, and the temperature was holding steady at 350 degrees. The bird looked absolutely perfect. Its golden skin was just beginning to crisp up, exactly as it was supposed to. My phone was resting on the side table next to my chair. The battery read 23%. The alarm was set for 3:30, 30 minutes to go. "Mom!" Paul appeared in the kitchen doorway, his purse slung over his shoulder, a shopping list in his hand. "I'm about to head out for that cranberry sauce. You're absolutely positive about the timing?" "Absolutely," I said, standing up and walking with him to the front door. 30 minutes, on the dot. "I've got this." "Honey?" He paused at the door, his keys jangling in his hand. "You know what? You are the best mother a son could ever ask for. I honestly don't know what I would do without your help." His words warmed a place deep inside my chest. This was why I tolerated Jessica's subtle insults. Why I continued to show up even when I felt her coolness. My son valued me, needed me, and trusted me with the most important aspects of their family traditions. "It's my pleasure," I said with a smile. "Drive safely." Jessica's car pulled into the driveway just as Paul was backing out. She waved at him through her windshield, then climbed out of her car carrying a small bag from a hardware store. Her errands were apparently finished. "How is everything going in there?" she asked, nodding her head toward the house. "Perfectly. The turkey is right on schedule," she nodded. But I saw something flicker in her expression. A hint of doubt, or perhaps even a sliver of hope that something might go wrong. "Well, I guess we'll see, won't we?" "Yes," I said, keeping my voice calm and refusing to rise to her bait. "We will." Jessica headed inside, leaving me standing alone on the front porch. The suburban street was quiet in both directions, most of the neighbors likely deep in their own holiday preparations. A few cars drove past, filled with families on their way to their own Thanksgiving feasts. I went back to my chair in the living room. It was 3:15 now, just 15 more minutes until the alarm would chime, reminding me to check on the turkey's progress. Everything was going exactly according to plan. The house settled into a peaceful afternoon stillness. There was no noise from the television, no conversation, just the distant, gentle hum of the oven and the occasional creak of the house settling. This was the kind of silence. I appreciated a silence filled with purpose, not loneliness. It was the silence of a woman entrusted with an important task. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see the oven light, glowing steadily. The turkey would be developing that perfect, golden brown color by now, the skin tightening and crisping, while the meat inside remained tender and juicy. 3 hours of meticulous cooking would yield the magnificent centerpiece everyone was anticipating. My phone showed 3:20. 10 more minutes. I could hear Jessica moving around upstairs, probably changing her clothes, or making those work calls she had mentioned earlier. I was grateful for her absence. These moments of responsibility felt purer when I wasn't having to navigate her passive-aggressive remarks or thinly veiled doubts about my abilities. The afternoon light started to shift, adopting that warm, golden hue that signals the approach of evening. Soon, the house would be filled with the sounds of family joyful voices, laughter, the clatter of serving dishes and silverware. Edward would compliment the turkey. Francis would ask for a second helping. Sophie would help serve the children. But first, I had to deliver on my promise. 30 minutes exactly, just as Paul had instructed. The timer would go off. I would check the turkey's progress, maybe baste it one last time, and then return to my chair to wait for the final hour of cooking. It was simple, straightforward, precisely the kind of task I had been successfully managing for decades. 3:25. 5 more minutes. I leaned back into the comfortable armchair, feeling the deep satisfaction that comes from a job being done right. The morning's preparations had gone off without a hitch. The turkey was cooking perfectly, and in just a few short hours, the entire family would be gathered around a table that I had helped to create. This was what reliability looked like. This was what it meant to be trustworthy. 3:30. Approached on the grandfather clock across the room. The warmth of the afternoon sun crept through the living room, feeling like a gentle, comforting blanket. I had been awake since 6 a.m., driving across the city, lifting the heavy turkey, and standing on my feet for hours during the morning's preparations. The comfortable chair cradled my tired body perfectly. My eyelids felt heavy, just a brief rest, I told myself. The alarm would wake me in 30 minutes. There was plenty of time to check the turkey, make any necessary adjustments, and then wait for the final phase of cooking. The house hummed quietly around me, the oven working steadily, the refrigerator cycling on and off, the subtle, comforting sounds of a home functioning exactly as it should. My breathing deepened. The phone sat securely on the side table. The timer was set. Everything was under control. 3:45 came and went. 4 passed in silence. My phone's screen flickered once, then twice, before going completely dark as the battery finally gave out. There was no alarm, no vibration, nothing at all. In the kitchen, the turkey continued to cook. Golden brown, transitioned to a deep, dark brown. Dark brown, then blackened at the edges. The skin cracked and split, releasing juices that sizzled and burned on the hot oven floor. 4:30 arrived, bringing with it the first faint wisps of smoke curling from the oven vents. The smell started subtly, a hint of overcooked meat, a touch of charred stuffing. By 4:45, a gray haze filled the kitchen, drifting silently into the living room where I slept on, peacefully and completely unaware. The turkey transformed from a holiday centerpiece into an utter disaster. Its skin blackened and peeled away from the meat. The stuffing inside turned to charcoal. The smoke detector should have blared, but its battery had died months ago. Another small household maintenance task that had been overlooked in the frantic pace of daily life. 5. The acrid smell finally pierced through the layers of my unconsciousness, creeping into my dreams and turning them dark and confused. Something was wrong. Something was burning. My eyes snapped open. Smoke. A thick, choking smoke was filling the living room. The smell hit me like a physical blow. Burned meat, charred stuffing, the unmistakable scent of a complete and utter culinary catastrophe. No, 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 no. I lurched out of the chair, my legs stiff and protesting from sleeping in an awkward position. My phone lay inert on the side table, its screen as black as the smoke swirling through the house. The horrifying realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. How long had I been asleep? The kitchen looked like a war zone. Smoke poured from the oven vents, so thick that it made my eyes water and my throat burn. I grabbed a pair of oven mitts and yanked open the oven door. A blast of intense heat hit my face. More smoke billowed out in choking clouds. Inside, what had once been a beautiful 18-pound turkey now resembled something salvaged from a fire, black, charred beyond all recognition, completely destroyed. How could I? The words died in my throat. I pulled the ruined bird from the oven, setting it on the stovetop with hands that shook uncontrollably. The metal roasting pan was scorched black underneath. Grease had burned and blackened on the oven floor. The smell was overwhelming, acrid and sharp, the kind of smoke that would seep into fabrics and furniture and linger for weeks. Windows. I needed to get the windows open immediately. I raced through the house, throwing open every window I could reach. Cool November air rushed in. But it would take hours to clear the smoke completely. Hours we simply didn't have. I grabbed my phone, desperately pressing the power button. Nothing. It was completely dead. It was 5. Paul would be back any minute. Guests were expected at 5:30. In just 30 minutes, the house would be filled with family members eagerly anticipating a perfect Thanksgiving dinner, and instead, they would be greeted by this smoke, this destruction, and the charred remains of their holiday centerpiece. The turkey was beyond saving. No amount of scraping or saucing could disguise this level of incineration. We needed a replacement, and we needed it now. Maybe the grocery store would still have some pre-cooked turkeys available. Maybe I could drive fast enough to find something, anything, to salvage the dinner. It was Thanksgiving afternoon, but surely somewhere, car doors slammed shut in the driveway. My heart sank into my stomach. They were back early. Through the front window, I watched Paul step out of his car, a bag of cranberry sauce in his hand, his face bright with the satisfaction of a successful shopping trip. Behind him, Jessica emerged from her own car, followed by Edward, Francis, and Sophie, all arriving together 15 minutes ahead of schedule. Their cheerful voices carried across the lawn until they reached the front porch, and then there was silence. "Do you smell that?" Paul's voice carried through the door. "Something's burning." I stood frozen in the smoky kitchen, the oven mitts still on my hands, the destroyed turkey cooling on the stovetop like evidence of criminal negligence. There was nowhere to hide. No way to minimize what had happened. The front door swung open. "Mom?" Paul called out, his earlier happiness now replaced by concern. "What is that smell?" I walked to the kitchen doorway as they filed into the house. Paul saw my face first. The guilt. The ash stains on my shirt. The look of utter defeat in my posture. His eyes widened as he took in the haze of smoke still hanging heavy in the air. Oh no. The bag of cranberry sauce slipped from his fingers. "Mom, what happened?" Edward appeared behind him, his face creased with worry. Francis pulled Sophie back a step, both of them taking in the disaster with shocked expressions. Jessica pushed past them all, heading straight for the kitchen. "I fell asleep," I said simply. "My phone died. I'm so sorry." Jessica reached the kitchen first, her face turning pale as she laid eyes on the blackened turkey. "Jesus Christ, Margaret, look at this." Language, Edward scolded automatically, but his heart wasn't in it. Paul rushed to the oven, peering at the charred remains of what should have been their perfect holiday centerpiece. How long were you asleep? How long was it cooking? I don't know, an hour? Maybe more? I confessed. The words felt like admitting to a terrible crime. The battery died. The alarm never went off. An hour? Jessica's voice climbed in pitch. You overcooked our Thanksgiving turkey by an entire hour. Francis, ever the practical one, stepped forward. Let's get more windows open. We need to clear this smoke out. She headed for the dining room windows, with Sophie following close behind to help. Edward moved to my side, his weathered hand touching my arm gently. Accidents happen, Margaret. Don't be too hard on yourself. But Paul looked stricken, staring at the ruined turkey as if it represented something much larger than just a spoiled dinner. The guests will be here in 15 minutes. What are we going to do? I'll drive to the store right now, I offered desperately. Maybe they have something pre-cooked. Or on Thanksgiving afternoon? Jessica laughed bitterly. Everything's been closed for hours. There's nothing open until tomorrow. The grim reality of the situation settled over us like the lingering smoke. No turkey meant no traditional dinner. No traditional dinner meant a ruined holiday for 24 family members who had been looking forward to this gathering for weeks. We could order pizza, Sophie suggested weakly from the dining room. Pizza! Jessica repeated the word as if it were a curse. For Thanksgiving? With Edward and Francis and all the cousins coming? Pizza! Paul sank into a kitchen chair, his head in his hands. I should have stayed. I should have checked on you before I left. No. I moved toward him, desperate to take full responsibility. This is completely my fault. I promised to watch the turkey, and I failed. The phone dying is not an excuse. I should have set a backup timer. I should have stayed awake. Edward opened more windows while Francis returned from the dining room. The smoke's clearing out a bit, she reported. The house will eventually air out. Eventually isn't going to help us tonight. Jessica muttered, staring at the blackened bird with undisguised disgust. The kitchen fell quiet, the only sound being the fresh air flowing through the open windows. Everyone seemed to be processing the sheer magnitude of the disaster. It wasn't just about the ruined turkey. It was about the ruined holiday, the disappointed family members, the broken tradition. Paul looked up at me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Mom, I know you didn't mean for this to happen, but it did happen, Jessica said quietly. Her voice carried a dangerous edge, a controlled fury that was barely being held in check. I knew exactly where this was going. Jessica's face transformed right before my eyes. The veneer of polite disappointment melted away, replaced by something much darker, more primitive. Her jaw clenched tight, and her hands curled into fists at her sides. You worthless old woman! The words exploded from her like gunfire. You can't do a single thing right. Edward stepped backward, his hand flying to his chest. Sophie grabbed Francis's arm. Even Paul froze, completely shocked by the venom in his wife's voice. Jessica, please, he started. No! She wheeled around to face him, then turned her glare back to me. I am sick of this. Paul, I am sick of pretending your mother is some kind of blessing when she is nothing but a burden. The kitchen fell silent again, except for the sound of the wind whistling through the open windows. A cold November air that couldn't clear the poisonous atmosphere building between us. Useless, she stepped closer to me, her voice dropping to a menacing growl. Pathetic, can't be trusted with the simplest task. I stood perfectly still, watching this woman I had once considered family reveal her true self completely. Years of careful politeness, of barely concealed resentment, were finally erupting in front of witnesses. A small part of me actually felt relieved. The pretense was finally over. That's enough, Edward said firmly. his voice carrying the authority of an elder brother and family patriarch. "Jessica, you are going way too far." But Jessica was beyond hearing reason. She grabbed the ruined turkey from where I had set it on the counter, her face twisting with disgust and rage. "This is what we get." She lifted the blackened bird over her head. "This is what happens when we trust her with anything important." "Don't you dare," I started, but it was too late. She hurled the turkey directly at me. I ducked sideways just in time, and the charred bird sailed past my shoulder, exploding against the kitchen wall behind me. Burnt stuffing scattered across the floor. Grease splattered the cabinets. The impact left a dark, ugly stain on the white paint. "Jessica?" Paul screamed. "What is wrong with you?" Frances stepped forward, her face dark with disapproval. "That's enough, Jessica. It's time to calm down." "Calm down?" Jessica laughed bitterly. "This is Thanksgiving, the most important day of the year for families. And she destroyed it." She pointed at me as if I were some kind of criminal, just like she destroys everything she touches. Sophie covered her mouth with both hands, staring at the turkey mess on the wall. Edward moved protectively toward me, his elderly face creased with concern and disgust at Jessica's behavior. "I can drive right now," I said quietly, trying to maintain what little dignity I had left while turkey grease dripped down the wall. "Maybe I can find another turkey somewhere." "With what?" Jessica's voice climbed higher. "Everything is closed. There is nowhere to go. 24 people are coming here expecting dinner, and you've ruined it completely." She advanced on me, backing me toward the kitchen doorway. Her face was a purplish color now, veins standing out on her forehead. Spittle flew from her mouth as she shouted, "I am done pretending to be grateful. Done acting like you're helpful when all you do is cause problems. You can't be relied on for anything." Lo, there it was. The accusation that cut the deepest. The one that confirmed everything I had long suspected about her true feelings. All those years of financial help, all those times she had called me reliable, dependable, her savior. It was all lies, all of it. "Get out," she was screaming now, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "This is my house, my family. I don't want your pathetic help anymore." The living room was just behind me, a larger, more formal space. It was the heart of their home, where family pictures lined the mantelpiece, where Christmas mornings were celebrated, where my grandchildren played. Now, it was about to become a battlefield. "Jessica, stop this," Paul pleaded, grabbing her arm. She shook him off roughly. "If you don't leave right now," she snarled, stepping so close I could smell the coffee on her breath, "I will make you leave." I backed into the living room, with Jessica advancing like a predator stalking its wounded prey. The family followed reluctantly, Paul wringing his hands, Edward clutching Sophie's arm, and Frances positioning herself strategically between us. "This is my house," Jessica shouted, gesturing wildly at the family photos on the mantel, the comfortable furniture, the traditional Thanksgiving decorations. "My family. I don't want to see your pathetic face in here anymore." The living room felt different now, corrupted. This space, where children had opened Christmas presents, where birthday parties had been celebrated, where family had gathered for countless happy occasions, was now witnessing something ugly and irreversible. "Whoa there, Jessica." Frances stepped directly between us, her hands raised peacefully, but firmly. "This is Paul's mother we're talking about. Your children's grandmother." "Grandmother?" Jessica laughed bitterly. "What kind of grandmother ruins her own family's holiday? What kind of woman falls asleep when people are counting on her?" Edward found his voice, sharp with moral disapproval. "Jessica Thompson, you are acting like a child, throwing a tantrum. This is not the woman your husband married." "Oh, you want to know who he married?" Jessica's eyes glittered dangerously. "He married someone who is tired of cleaning up after this old woman's mistakes. Christmas last year, She forgot to pick up the ham. At Easter, the dessert she was supposed to bring never showed up. My birthday party. Stop it, Paul whispered, tears starting to well up in his eyes. Just stop. But Jessica was building momentum, years of grievances pouring out like infected wounds finally being lanced. She pointed at me accusingly, her finger jabbing dangerously close to my face. Every single time we trust her with anything, it's a disaster, and I'm supposed to be grateful. I'm supposed to pretend she's helping when she's just making everything worse. I remained silent, watching her expose her true character completely. Every word she spoke revealed more about her than it did about me. The guests were seeing it too. Francis's face was growing darker. Edward was shaking his head sadly, and Sophie looked genuinely frightened. Someone needs to teach her that there are consequences for her actions. Jessica stepped closer, invading my personal space. Maybe I should show you what useless really means, old woman. That's enough. Francis moved between us completely, her broad shoulders blocking Jessica's approach. You are talking about getting physical with a 68-year-old woman in front of your husband on Thanksgiving. Jessica's face contorted with frustrated rage. Move aside, Francis. This doesn't concern you. It concerns all of us now, Edward said coldly. Because you've made it concern us. This is family business. And family does not treat family like this. Family? Jessica's voice cracked. What has she ever done for this family except cause problems? She's a burden. A liability. We would be better off without. Jessica, Paul's voice cut through her rant like a whip. Enough. You're talking about my mother. She whirled to face him, her eyes wild with rage and frustration. Your mother who just ruined Thanksgiving. Your mother who can't be trusted with the simplest responsibility. When are you going to see her for what she really is? The room fell silent except for Paul's quiet sobbing. This wasn't just about a burned turkey anymore. This was about respect, about family bonds, about fundamental values being shattered in front of everyone. What she really is? I said quietly, my voice cutting through the thick tension. Everyone turned to look at me. I straightened to my full height, meeting Jessica's furious gaze directly. You want to talk about what someone really is, Jessica? My voice carried a new edge, a steel that had been forged through years of suppressed frustration. Let's talk about reliability. Let's talk about who can really be counted on. The room went completely quiet. Even Jessica stopped her ranting, sensing the palpable shift in the atmosphere. I stepped forward, no longer the apologetic old woman who had burned the turkey. Years of patience had finally reached their end. You say I'm unreliable. My voice carried a new authority. That nobody can count on me. Then, explain something to me, Jessica. Francis stepped aside slightly, recognizing that this confrontation had moved beyond a physical threat into something much deeper. Edward and Sophie leaned forward, sensing that crucial information was about to be revealed. If I'm so unreliable, I continued, meeting her eyes directly, why did you count on me so many times? Jessica's face flickered with the first hint of uncertainty. What are you talking about? December 2019. My voice grew stronger. $15,000 for the down payment on this house. You came to my apartment desperate. The banks had all turned you down. You were crying, Jessica. Actual tears. Paul's head snapped up, his eyes widening. He had known about some of the help, but not the full details. You swore you'd pay me back as soon as you got that promotion, I continued. You said I was saving your family's future. Do you remember that conversation? The color began to drain from Jessica's face. That's different. Different how? I pressed on. April 2021. $8,000 for Tanya's college tuition. You called me from the bursar's office, panicking because her scholarship had fallen through. I used money from my retirement account, Jessica. My retirement. Sophie gasped softly. Edward's eyes narrowed as he began to understand the full picture. You promised to pay me back with interest, I continued relentlessly. You said I was the most generous person you knew. Were you lying then? Or are you lying now? Stop, Jessica whispered, but I was far from finished. September 2022. $3,500 when your transmission died. I drove straight to the mechanic shop and paid in cash while you waited. You said I always came through. You said you didn't deserve a mother-in-law like me. Paul stood frozen, the pieces clicking together in his mind. Francis and Sophie exchanged meaningful glances, the financial pattern becoming painfully clear. Last winter, I said, my voice growing quieter but more powerful. $12,000 for the medical bills your insurance wouldn't cover. I met you at the hospital billing office while Paul was recovering upstairs. You cried again then, Jessica. You swore on your children's lives that you'd pay me back. The living room was utterly silent now.
Everyone was staring at Jessica, whose aggressive posture had collapsed into something smaller, cornered. Should I continue? I asked. The $200 for groceries when your paycheck was late, the $500 for heating bills, the $300 when the washing machine broke, all those small favors that you promised were just until payday. Edward's face showed complete understanding now. Frances shook her head slowly, disapproval written across her features. $38,500, Jessica. The number hung in the air like an accusation. Over 5 years. Every time you needed help, every time you were desperate, who did you call? Who was reliable then? Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came out. How much have you paid back? I asked. Not one single penny. How many times have you even said thank you? I'm still waiting. I stepped closer to her now, the power dynamic completely reversed. So, tell me again about reliability, Jessica. Tell me again who can't be counted on. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been counting on this worthless old woman to save you over and over again. The truth settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Paul stared at his wife with new eyes. The guests looked at Jessica with open judgment. And now, I said softly, now you want to throw me out of your house? The very house I helped you buy. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Jessica's face cycled through a series of emotions. Shock, denial, rage, and then something darker, desperation. Her hands trembled at her sides and her breath came in short, ragged gasps. You think you've won? Her voice cracked. You think you can humiliate me in my own house? Jessica, please. Paul reached toward her, but she jerked away violently. No, I'll show you who's worthless. She lunged at me with a surprising speed for a woman of her size. I stepped back quickly, my hands rising defensively, but her momentum carried her forward. Her fist swung toward my face, missing by inches as I ducked sideways. Stop! Paul screamed. Edward gasped, pressing himself back against the wall. Sophie grabbed Frances's arm as she stepped forward, ready to intervene. Jessica stumbled past me, then spun around with wild eyes. Fight me, old woman. Let's see how reliable you are when it really counts. I'm not fighting you, I said calmly, continuing to back away. You're upset. We can talk about this. Ugh, she swung again, this time catching my shoulder with a glancing blow that sent me stumbling toward the dining room. I'm done talking, done pretending you matter. The coffee table caught the back of my legs. I went down hard and Jessica loomed over me with raised fists. Frances rushed forward, grabbing Jessica's arms from behind. That's enough. Frances's voice boomed with authority. You've lost your mind. Jessica struggled against my sister's grip, elbowing backward, trying to break free. Let me go. She destroyed my life. She destroyed everything. Get back, Edward shepherded Sophie toward the front door. She's completely lost control. I rolled away from the coffee table, getting to my feet carefully. My shoulder throbbed where Jessica's fist had connected, but nothing felt broken. Around us, the living room had been transformed into a scene of chaos. Magazines were overturned, a lamp was knocked askew. The comfortable family space was now a crime scene. You ruined my marriage, Jessica screamed, still fighting Frances's restraint. You turned my husband against me, made me look like a fool. You did that all by yourself, I said quietly, backing toward the kitchen. She broke free from Frances's grip with a surge of desperate strength, charging after me again. I'll kill you, do you hear me? I'll kill you for this. The kitchen loomed behind me, a knife block sitting on the counter. Dangerous territory. Jessica's eyes fixed on the same target, her face twisted with a murderous rage. "Jessica, there are children in this neighborhood," Paul pleaded, tears streaming down his face. "What is wrong with you?" Francis grabbed her again, this time getting a better hold. "Sister or not, I will not let you hurt an innocent woman." I reached the counter, and my hand found my phone where I had left it hours ago. I pressed the power button, and to my relief, the screen lit up, showing just enough battery for what I needed to do. This had gone far beyond a family dispute. It had escalated into genuine violence. "She's not innocent," Jessica writhed against Francis's grip. "She's a manipulator, a user. She planned this whole thing." "Planned burning the turkey," Sophie called from the doorway. "Planned you losing your temper. Listen to yourself." My fingers found 911 on the keypad. 3 simple numbers that would bring official help, formal consequences, an end to this nightmare. "What are you doing?" Jessica's eyes fixed on my phone with panic. "Put that down." 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice came through clearly. "I need the police at 1247 Maple Street," I said calmly, despite the chaos erupting around me. "There's a domestic violence situation. My daughter-in-law is attacking me. There are witnesses." "No," Jessica's scream echoed through the house. Those 5 minutes felt like an eternity. Francis kept Jessica pinned against the kitchen counter while I stayed on the line with the dispatch operator. Paul paced the living room, wringing his hands. Edward and Sophie huddled near the front window, watching for the squad cars. "I can see them coming," Sophie announced. Red and blue lights flashed across the house, painting the holiday decorations in official colors. Car doors slammed. Heavy footsteps approached the front door. "Police department, open up." Edward unlocked the door quickly. 2 officers stepped inside, a tall woman with graying hair and a younger man built like a linebacker. Their eyes swept the scene professionally, taking in the overturned furniture, the frightened family members, the obvious signs of a struggle. "I'm Officer Martinez," the woman said. "Who called 911? I raised my hand. "Margaret Ross. That's my daughter-in-law over there. She physically attacked me after a family argument." "Is anyone injured?" Officer Martinez approached me, nodding my torn shirt and the red mark forming on my shoulder. "Minor bruising," I said. "Nothing requiring medical attention." The male officer moved toward Francis and Jessica. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from her." Francis released her grip reluctantly. "Officer, this woman attacked her elderly mother-in-law. I had to restrain her to prevent serious injury." Jessica straightened her clothing, attempting to regain some composure. "This is all just a misunderstanding, a family disagreement that got out of hand." "Attempted assault is not a misunderstanding," Martinez said firmly. She turned to me. "Tell me exactly what happened." I spoke calmly and methodically. "We had a disagreement about a ruined turkey dinner. I then revealed that my daughter-in-law owes me over $38,000 in unpaid loans. She became enraged and physically attacked me, threatening to kill me. These family members witnessed everything." Martinez took notes while scanning the room. "How many witnesses?" 4. Francis stepped forward. "I'm Frances Thompson, her sister. I watched Jessica throw food and then lunge at Margaret with the intent to cause harm." Edward found his voice. "I'm Edward Ross, Margaret's brother. I saw the entire incident. Jessica completely lost control." Sophie nodded in agreement. "Sarah Mitchell. The violence started after Margaret mentioned the money Jessica had borrowed but never repaid." The second officer approached Paul, who stood torn between loyalty and the truth. "Sir, did you witness this incident?" He looked at his wife, then at me, tears flowing freely down his face. "Yes, my wife. She attacked my mother. She threatened to hurt her. I've never seen her like this before." Jessica's face crumpled as her husband's testimony sealed her fate. "Paul, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," he said quietly. "My mother has been supporting our family for years, and you repaid her kindness with violence." Officer Martinez addressed the room. "I need to speak with each witness separately. But first," she turned to Jessica, Ma'am, based on multiple witness statements, I'm placing you under citation for domestic assault. This is ridiculous, Jessica protested. She provoked me, humiliated me in front of my family. Emotional provocation does not justify physical violence, Martinez replied firmly. She produced a citation book. You have the right to contest this in court, but the evidence and witness testimony are clear. The younger officer photographed the overturned furniture, my torn shirt, and the evidence of the struggle throughout the living room and kitchen. What happens now? Paul asked quietly. Your wife will receive an official citation. If she commits any further acts of violence or harassment against Ms. Ross, she will face arrest and formal charges. This incident is now part of the official record. I watched Jessica's face as the reality of the situation settled in. Official consequences, legal documentation. This was no longer just a family matter. It was criminal behavior on her permanent record. Martinez handed me a card. Ms. Ross, you have the right to pursue a restraining order if you feel unsafe. Given the age difference and the violent threats, the court would likely approve protective measures. That won't be necessary, I said, meeting Jessica's eyes. As long as this behavior never happens again. The officer completed her paperwork while the family members processed what had just transpired. Official intervention, the truth documented, justice served through the proper channels.